Hello, everybody. This is Patrick Hebert from Autris. We're building the Veritas villages. It's been a while since we've done a podcast. We've been kind of busy. So what have we been up to, Erik?
You had us down in Argentina looking at land. That was pretty exciting. And you've been on a lot of conferences, right?
Yeah, Argentina, and we were in El Salvador. Spencer and I are doing a lot of land walking in El Salvador, and then in Roatan in Honduras, and a bunch of different Bitcoin and free cities and those types of conferences where we were speaking and getting everybody to know what we're doing here in Latin America. So let's get into it. What are we talking about today? I'm kind of blind to this. This is like those podcasts. This is just like the guy's reaction because
That's right.
I'm seeing some of this for the first time. But Erik's put this together, so I'll let him explain.
I like these. They kind of ambush you, and then we see what happens.
This is the real reaction.
Yeah. So this came up actually when we were in Argentina, and you, me, and Spencer were there, and the Netherlands announced that wealth tax on unrealized gains, and we were all kind of freaking out, as we obviously do. So got into our head a little bit, and there's a bit of an update on it. It hasn't gone through yet, and we'll talk about it. But it got us thinking about what's going on in Europe, and we tried to take a little bit of a snapshot on what's going on there and what we might see coming. And so I made a number of slides just to kind of see where we are. And the first one I'm going to start with is just getting a handle on what the income tax rates are in Europe. And so I've ranked them from worst, I guess, to best. And I even threw Australia and New Zealand in there, but
and Canada, I see.
Yeah, Canada.
Canada's always near the top of marginal income tax rates.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Canada is like the only North American country in there, and it's up there high. So we're starting at Denmark at that 60.5%.
You know when they're like the actually advertised real marginal income tax rate is above 60%, that you're probably closer to 80, frankly, when you're getting taxed on all the different taxes that you have, right?
Yeah, this is income.
Yeah.
They have VAT,
yeah,
all kinds of stuff.
I mean, when I was in Canada, we have what there, 53.5?
Yeah.
I went through the math and added up the GST and PST and blah, blah, blah. And I think they took away the carbon tax now, but that didn't even exist when I was there. And it was in the, north of 70, probably at least high 60s when you started seeing how much of your income was taxed. And then I always put that into time. And it's like I was working for the government till September of every year until I started working for myself, right?
Yeah.
In Denmark, apparently you're working till around November. So you can just save a few bucks for Christmas.
Yeah, Denmark's really interesting because there's a few things in the slides that are coming up, and it's strange because they don't actually have that high of a debt, but we'll get to that. What I found interesting was the range of when you hit these really high tax rates.
Yeah.
And I highlighted a couple there. Like Denmark's only, these are all in USD. Denmark's only at 83,000. Belgium's only at 55,000.
I mean, that's at least by North American standards, that's a one income earner in a fairly average job nowadays,
Yeah.
right? So like you hit that tax rate quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the one advantage for Canada in this case, it's 180,000, 182 or whatever. And the other ones are mostly lower than that. UK is pretty high too.
Yeah.
But when you're taxing people that make $55,000 at this rate, like you're basically putting them into the poverty level just by taking the tax away.
Yeah.
Right?
So in general, I mean, Europe is in a lot of trouble from a taxation perspective. So back to the topic at hand. So the wealth tax status, I just wanted to see what was going on in the different countries. So Denmark's got one coming. France already has one. Austria, Belgium, Canada, Portugal, Sweden, they don't have one. Spain has one. It's quite complicated. It goes from 0.2 up to 3.5%. They've managed to move around a lot of the people there. We can talk about that. So the Netherlands is the one that we were going to talk about today. The one that they've proposed is on liquid assets. So it's not on real estate, but it was on stocks, bonds, crypto. it makes sense that it's liquid because then they could make the people sell it
Yeah,
every
well,
year.
it makes
to pay
sense
for
from their point of view. It sure doesn't make sense for the person.
it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if these guys have ever studied economics or anything, or like we're kind of Austrian economics fans and Mises Institute and all that sort of stuff in our world. But if you force somebody, what is it, 38%, 36%?
It was 36.5 or something like that. they were
36%
proposing.
tax on your stock that you own, for instance, your shares in companies. You're going to have to sell that to, then it makes it realized, first of all. And they talk about a credit, right? That, oh, but the stock can go down, or you have already sold it and you don't have it to have a credit against anymore. It doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, it's calculated at the last day of December, and then it's due in April or something like that. And if it falls between then and when you sell it, they don't care. They
It
just
could
want the
fall
money.
to, it could fall 60%, and now you're having to liquidate 100% in order to pay the 38%.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just completely
So,
ridiculous.
so that we'll move this along quickly. There's a lot of data here. If anyone wants to see the slides, hopefully it's showing up on the video quite well. So that's what's kind of going on in Europe. I've got some particulars here. We talked about the Netherlands. Norway is kind of an interesting one because the two countries that have the most millionaires moving out is actually Norway and the UK. The Netherlands, they haven't yet, but they might.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of these discussions that we're talking. Is obviously it impacts us a lot because we get a lot of people from Europe, Canada, Australia recently. They're getting chased out of their countries from, wealth taxes and exit taxes. In the case of exit taxes, they want to get out before that it's implemented so that they don't get that tax in addition to the wealth tax and everything else tax. But like the UK, I was just watching some other podcast, and the UK had 15,600 wealthy folks leave the country in 2025. So those are the people, you can dislike the rich or whatever, but those are the people that create the jobs, start the companies, generally are the venture capitalists for startups. And so you're like, now, first of all, what did I see? I'm just sorry to take this off in another direction.
You have a great memory, by the way. They lost 10,800 millionaires in 2024, and it's projected to hit 16,500 in 2025.
Yeah, so the real number was, according to the stats I saw, was 15,000, a little lower than that, but 15,600. Regardless, roughly 16,000 people left. Yeah. And it's just what it turned. This stat I saw was really interesting. The one guy that started, what was it called, Revolut company, multi-billion dollar company. He's like one of the wealthiest guys in the world. He it was based in the UK. He is in the process of moving out of the country, and they calculated that the tax that he would have paid this coming year that he won't be paying would take 450,000 average people to pay. So then I looked that up, and that's the size of Manchester. So Manchester, Sheffield, cities are now have to be taxed, just that city, that whole city, for one guy that they chased out. A guy that was super intelligent, an Elon Musk of the UK starts these big companies, and what, people feel good about that? Like, how socialist have they become?
Yeah, there's two things going on. There is, like, I was going to talk about in Denmark and in Norway, and I'm sure in other countries too, there is a real hate the rich kind of mindset that works its way into these countries. And the politicians, they might even know that they're going to lose revenue, and they do it anyways because they know that the popular vote, once a country gets on the socialist side, they're going to vote for those people anyways. And the politicians aren't stupid. I mean, the math is there. These always fail. We're going to get into the doom loop, which you just described.
Yeah, like, sorry to jump ahead in here, but it's the major difference that I see between the Western world and Latin America. Latin America has been, I've talked about this before, that I have a heat map of what it was, socialist versus capitalist. Oh, cool. And 30 years ago, it was very socialist. Now it's much more capitalist. And it's because they learned their lesson. Socialism doesn't work, right? And you know what? It takes a generation, or maybe two, maybe three, to change that woke mindset that has been driven into the West now, that rich people are all evil. They got all their money from doing evil things. And so they should all be, taxed to spread their wealth out among less fortunate. But it just doesn't work. People can leave, and they do. Governments can't leave. They get stuck with the problem that they've created. So.
It's interesting that you say that that rich people can leave, and I'm going to foreshadow a little bit of predictions for the rest of this podcast. So we have some wealth tax particulars, just in case people want to get into it, but they're all quite strange. Like Norway, they take basically 1.1% of your assets, not even your liquid assets. If you have a fleet of like 100 cars as a business owner, they're like, yeah, we want 1.1% of that value. Like they've had on a per capita basis, they've had more people move out than the UK. I mean, the UK is more significant because of their huge population, but it's significant.
But your history, your ancestry is Norwegian, right?
Yeah.
You had a story about taxes too, where they expected by creating a new tax or upping the taxes that they would earn X billion or whatever.
Yeah.
And they actually ended up losing, right, because people left.
Yeah, I have a slide here actually about the effects. Let me see if I can zoom to it.
So I'm making you jump ahead 10 slides.
No, it's okay.
Here.
I got a nice little slide here. So the ones we're going to look at is just for our video editor. This is the estimated impact of migration and revenue loss. So Norway had, they lost an estimated 600 million in annual wealth, and they had thought that they were going to actually get that. So that was a big oversight. And this is just continuing. Like once people get scared and you put your plans in place, you don't just stop because they like slow it down for a day or two. It's like, what's coming. So France, France had to backpedal a little bit. They had a wealth tax, and it was including real estate, and they lost 12,000 millionaires at the peak of all this. That was in 2016. It cost them double what.
So they raised roughly $4 billion by upping the tax, but what they lost from the 12,000 millionaires leaving
was double
what they. So they lost $8 billion roughly
in VAT and income tax. Yeah,
and like I just don't get it. Like, who are running these ministries? Like, what?
Well,
I mean, a kindergarten student could figure that out.
Yeah, but I said, I think it's they'll do anything to get voted, right? So I mean, we were talking about a week or two ago. Spain is there's a very socialist government in power in Spain right now, and they want to legalize it was 500,000, and now it's up to like 1.2 million illegal immigrants and make them citizens in time for the next election. And they think that's going to get them across the line.
Well, unfortunately, it might, right? But I was seeing stats on that too. So the open borders policies is let in a bunch of people that need the social services to take care of them. Yet there's more people coming in than leaving. The millionaires are leaving. The guys that create the jobs and have employees are leaving, but they're being more than double replaced by immigration from around the world that, like, I don't care, Trump said it, it's not necessarily the best and brightest that are coming in, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is the governments can say, well, no, we're net positive of this many people, and we're doing a great job, and we're creating jobs. And it's like, no, you just lost all the people that were creating the jobs, and now you brought a bunch of people. So you have, in that case, 12,000 millionaires that were paying into the system in taxes, and they're the ones holding up the social services net, right? Yeah. And then all these new people coming in that are dragging on it, but there's nobody paying it anymore. So now that's why I was saying earlier, like you got to tax a city like Manchester double just to make up for the guys that left.
Yeah,
one guy that left.
That's a great that's a great example. So there's a variety of wealth taxes in the EU. I thought I would kind of look into these high tax countries and just say, like, who's in trouble. And hopefully the slide is up in our video. I'm just going to quickly go through it. So Denmark, anyone whose debt to GDP ratio is over 100, I think they're in trouble. But I also wanted to see how quickly they're growing their debt, right? So Denmark, only 32%, their debt's not even growing, and they're one of the ones proposing a wealth tax.
Yeah, you got to wonder
I think it's that
it's
hate the rich thing.
yeah, exactly.
And they have a 42% proposed tax on crypto gains, which is coming up. So France, I'm going to go through this quickly. Over 117%, debt's growing at 2.7%, going bankrupt. Belgium, same thing, going bankrupt. Canada, 114%, growing at 2%, going bankrupt. As a side note, United States is already, I think, at 150%, and they're growing more than this. So going bankrupt.
Yeah, I was having an argument with somebody the other day about whose debt to GDP is worse, Canada or the US, and everybody thought Canada. It's like,
Yeah.
it's actually US.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's approaching 40 trillion.
There's so many websites out there where you can watch the debt counter go. It's just
The clock.
insanity. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go through this quickly. Spain, going bankrupt. Sweden, good job. Netherlands, I don't know why you need a wealth tax. You're not going bankrupt yet. Italy, you're fired. Bankrupt. Norway, they got oil.
The sad part of this is the ones that aren't going bankrupt or a decent debt to GDP ratio are
Doing it anyways.
are doing it anyway, and they're going to make themselves bankrupt. It's just more time.
You know what? There's another slide that's coming up here, and I think it's all related. The EU knows that if they do something in one country and the millionaires just move to another one, it doesn't solve anything, right?
Yeah.
So they are coordinating in the background to standardize this all across the EU.
Yeah.
It's actually it's out there.
Well, all I can say is promoting ourselves. We're sitting here in Panama City, where you can have a 0% income tax, and there's no capital gains tax, and there's lots of reasons. I mean, that's why we're talking about taxes, is because there are places that can go. And unfortunate situation in the Middle East, but Dubai used to be that place that they could go to. And we had dinner the other day with somebody that left Dubai because their apartment building got hit by a drone from Iran. So now people are looking like, where is a place that's not in the middle of some sort of turmoil? And Latin America keeps coming up as those places, right? And it's too bad that a lot of Europeans and from all over the world, can be Canadians, Australians, whatever. They're always looking at like, well, Canadians, maybe I should move to Florida or something like that. My taxes will be a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Europeans, or maybe I should move to, well, not Dubai anymore, but maybe Switzerland or something. But look outside your little close nest
Your
there.
sandbox.
Yeah. And people don't often see this. So that one of the reasons we want to talk about this is there's lots of great countries down here where you can actually keep your wealth.
That's true. Back to the idea of why this isn't working. We won't spend too much time on it, but like I think you mentioned the spending machine can't be turned off. The other thing we didn't talk about is the demographics. Like Europeans really quit having babies, right? So there's not the same future tax base that's going to be there. They're bringing in migrants, but those migrants in general are not contributing to the tax base. So it's actually making things worse.
Yeah.
And I talked about
this is an important point, I think, to make in general at a really high level. People tend to think, especially if you've had 2 or 3 generations without being part of a war, or at least on your own soil, they just tend to think that things will continue. Like Canadians are super guilty of this. They just think that everything will continue. It's just, this is what, it's a little rough right now. There's a bit of inflation and blah, blah, blah. But that's not how the world works. It's never worked like that. And people think, oh, we're smarter now. We have better technology, whatever the reason. It doesn't matter. Empires fall. They always will. And it takes only a couple generations before they forget about the last thing that, reset their country. In North America and Europe was kind of World War II. And then you have babies and the baby boomers, and they have kids. And then there's next generation. You're 3 generations deep. And people think, oh, it's just always going to be like this. No, it won't. Take my word for it. It won't. I don't know when, but we're seeing all the symptoms of the same. Like if you do research into the fall of the empires, the Ottoman, the Greek, the Roman empires, British Empire, this is part of the British Empire still falling.
Yeah.
But they all go through 4 or 5 of the same symptoms. And, one of the clear ones for me a few years ago was they start to hate your own country. And, and that's what the woke mind virus has done to a lot of the West. It's like, you hate the rich. You hate the fact that it's a capitalist country. It's like, white privilege, whatever the hell it is. It's one of the symptoms. And then, spreading yourself out too far, paying too many things in social services, getting an aging population that doesn't have babies. The Greek were classic, right? They started peeling grapes. That was the saying, right? But they had life so easy that they were peeling grapes because they just didn't want the skin when they ate the grapes. And when you got to that point, you're going to get overrun by somebody else, right, that had to work hard for it.
Yeah. It's so sad to see nations like start hating themselves.
Yeah.
And that's why I like seeing little countries like Poland that are just like, we're not going to have any of that stuff. We're proud of our country. We're going to keep it
Yeah.
going. And I really admire that. And the same thing with Latin America. It's like they don't seem to get involved in any of this stuff, and they're just like they're quite proud.
That's what I love
to be
about the
done.
culture down here. They're very proud of their countries.
Yeah,
right?
and they're not
Whether it's
they're not
Costa
gonna-
Rica or Nicaragua or Panama or Ecuador or whatever, they're very proud of their countries. And the other thing that meshes well with that is they're very, very family oriented. And so they don't absorb all this, nonsense from the woke side. It's like, don't interfere with my family. You're not going to preach woke in schools, right?
Yeah.
And, critical race theory and stuff like that. It just doesn't happen here. So we got a lot of good things going for us, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully it lasts. Like I just finished saying, nothing ever lasts, but hopefully for a few generations it does.
Yeah. Before we run on to another tax, I just wanted to kind of get to the bottom of the UK thing a little bit, because they don't have a wealth tax, and yet they have the most people leaving, right? So I kind of tried to summarize what was going on with them. They have a number of policy shifts that are just, it's been called the Wexit tax, which is the wealth exit tax. So one of the main things that they're doing is they're getting rid of an old regime that shields foreign residents from UK tax on overseas assets. That was scrapped. So that used to be basically tax-free if it was non-domiciled, and that they're going to be taxed on that. And another thing is they're going to be taxed on their worldwide global income and gains, regardless of where.
Well, you mentioned the EU basically applying the same crap everywhere if they can,
Yeah,
right?
It's coming.
France is, I think, it's in their parliament right now. I believe it's France that is going to be the third country that will tax your worldwide income. The U.S. and Eritrea are the only other two.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. So that scares the hell out of me, because I like the ability to move around and not be paying taxes back to a country that I was originally from. Only
the U.S. citizens right now have trouble with that. I mean, Eritrea as well, but there's not that much of a population. But if you're U.S., you have to basically give up your passport if you want to get away from that. Yeah. Every other country, it's tied to the residency. Every other country but the other one.
Yeah.
But as these guys start applying it, in the UK and France, probably Germany, Spain, everybody's going to want to get out pretty quickly. Anybody that's got anything happening anywhere else in the world, like if you had I don't know, investment in some other piece of property somewhere else in the world, suddenly it's now taxable.
Yeah, you have to cut your ties to the UK. So they're also going to try and put in a global inheritance tax, 40%. They're going to remove some trust protections that they had in place, and they're trying to put a 20% exit tax that's been proposed. And I just have some notes that aren't on the slide, but they've also threatened a capital gains rate to move it up from 20 to 24%. And this is interesting, a 20% VAT on private school tuitions. So if you're wealthy and you got your kids in school,
so they want another 20%. Educating your kids, and they're going to tax most of that.
Yeah, and they want to put if you die early, you know how your pension can usually go to your wife or maybe your kids. They want to put an inheritance tax on that too. So it's just
I think the global inheritance tax, honestly, is probably one of the major reasons why people are leaving. Like, if you've built your nest egg from hard work during your lifetime, and you have some, family funds to work with, the last thing you want is your kids to be saddled with that tax, right? And the inheritance tax going forward.
That's right, because a lot of these inheritance taxes, sometimes they're non-liquid assets, right? So all of a sudden your kids inherit like $2 million, and it's in property, but they have, let's say they got a 20% tax bill due. They don't have any money.
Yeah.
So they're forced to sell one of these properties.
And then what happens when not everybody at once, but a large chunk of people are forced to sell, all of a sudden there's oversupply.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what's happening in Canada for a different reason right now. Like, the Toronto condominium market is collapsing. And it's because in Canada's got a little different thing. In the US, if you get a 30-year mortgage, sorry, taking this on another tangent, but
It's all good.
I found this interesting. I didn't really even know this before last week. In the US, if you get a 30-year mortgage at a fixed rate, it's a 30-year mortgage at that rate. In Canada, you have to renew it every 5 years, despite the fact that it's 30-year mortgage.
Yeah.
So your 30-year mortgage might mean that the bank, like it means nothing. It's a 5-year mortgage because the bank doesn't even have to renew it.
Yeah.
So the problem is that this year, 2026, late last year, is 5 years after when almost a huge chunk of people were buying properties and buying condos.
Super low interest rates.
That's super, like, I don't know, 1.8% or something like that. And then it goes up to, I don't know, whatever it is, 6.9 or something like that. But I was looking at the mortgage payments. They were going up from $2,000 to $3,500. Like, that is enormous change.
Yeah.
That you didn't suddenly make $1,500 more a month, and you have no choice but to sell the condo. What happens? Everybody's in that boat. They're all selling it. Nobody can actually find a buyer. So the supply is huge. Inventory is growing and growing, and the prices are just plummeting. The same thing will happen, and unfortunately, so many people in these countries, their wealth is based on property.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't mean to bring up a "I told you so" moment. Did we have a podcast about a year and a half ago, or maybe a year ago, where we were like looking at the Canadian real estate market, and it was like going off the charts, and that proposed they were going to get rid of the capital gains exemption on your second property, but we were like, man, if I had a bunch of property in Canada, especially a second property, we're saying, like, sell that before it gets crazy. And I think it's too late now. Well, not
we had our little crystal ball, I guess, but it was very, very obvious what the outcome was going to be with all these things coming together. And I have younger people that I know, friends of my kids and things like that, that were buying property way beyond their means, to be honest, because that's just what the prices were on Vancouver Island or Vancouver area, million plus homes as their first purchase, and just stretched to the max at the interest rate that was then. And it's like, now they're in that boat where it's coming to time to renew it, and they won't be able to afford the payments.
That's so sad. I mean, everyone in Canada always was brainwashed for the last 20 years that the only way to get rich was really property. And it worked for a long time, right? And that's what you were saying earlier in the podcast, is that everyone, if you've had it really good for a long time, we just get so used to it that you can't quite look forward and see the writing on the wall.
Real estate, I think, is the key one there. Like, everybody always thinks real estate keeps going up. In the long run, if you've got a 50-year or 100-year span of time, very much likely. However, like Bitcoin, it's volatile. If you can't take the volatility in the middle, don't get in, right? So, it's one of those things that when I talk to these young people, and they're just like, real estate just keeps going up. It's like, look around you, look at other countries with that same home would be a $300,000 home, not $1 million home. So when this thing corrects, it's going to correct in a big way. And Toronto, we're already seeing, like, literally 800. I was looking at pricing on some of the condos in downtown Toronto. The $850,000 condo it was bought at $850,000. They aren't able to get 400 now. So it's lost more than half.
Wow. Yeah, it happens fast when it happens. I can imagine California in a couple of years if people keep leaving.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about one more tax and then wrap it up. Like, I'm not going to get into it, but Europe is so desperate. Like, they're doing these things because they're so desperate for revenue. This would have never happened if we'd been able to separate currency or money from state, right?
Yeah.
But they've been able to spend beyond their means, print and tax and all this stuff. But they found, so people are probably going to find ways to avoid these income taxes, right? They can eventually move out unless your country chases you. I fear the day when that happens. But the EU is not stupid on getting stuff. And so they've found a way to tax things that you can't avoid, and that's energy. And I have a chart here of what's happened to energy-related taxes since 2017. It's gone from annually 15 billion to 50. And basically, everyone I've talked to, even in
That's a
Norway,
tax on fuel and
fuel, yeah, they do it under the CO2 stuff, but it's on electricity and fuel mostly, right? And even in Norway, they have basically practically free hydroelectricity, and they were making the rest of the EU look bad because Germany's charging like, I don't know, like $1 a kilowatt hour or whatever like that is, and they guilted the politicians in Norway to sell them some cheap power because they were making the EU look so bad. So even in Norway, electricity prices have doubled, and of course they'd all converted to electric cars. So now their operating costs on their cars have doubled. So these CO2 related taxes, like, you can't escape it. In Europe, I mean, you need your fuel, you need to heat your home, you need to.
Well, I'm trying
have
to escape it
electricity.
in Veritas Villages.
Yeah,
Right? We have solar power and solar powered vehicles. So,
exactly.
well, someday they'll probably try to.
Yeah.
Well, if we weren't in Canada, they'd probably try to tax that too.
Yeah,
But
it's just another tax for them. So let's see if there's been any updates, because I started all this work in February and had to do a little bit of research to see if anything's changed in the last 2 months. So the Netherlands has kind of put that on hold. Like I said, the Denmark stepped up to the plate. They're proposing their own wealth tax, and like I said, they want to put in a 42% annual tax. I didn't say this earlier, on unrealized cryptocurrency
this is
gains.
Denmark.
Yes. So
anything on unrealized gains is absolutely ridiculous.
I predict we're going to have to learn a little bit of Danish in the next few months.
Gonna be a lot
Actually, you know what? We had our first client from Denmark
Really?
out at Coronado. Yeah, I've been talking to him.
I have a number of Danish friends. We'll have to get them on the show and see what their direct feelings are.
Get to the bottom of what Denmark's
I
doing.
just, it boggles my mind that there's like not a single economist in these ministries in the government that can say you can't tax on unrealized gains. They don't have it. It's the whole word, unrealized, right?
Yeah.
It's just, if you do that, somehow they have to come up with money that they didn't have. And the only thing you can do is try to sell that asset. And as soon as you do that, you're plummeting the price of the same asset among everybody. It's probably the quickest way to the bottom for countries.
Yeah, it's the doom loop. Let's go back to my doom loop slide here, because I don't think we covered it yet. So our video editor can bring this up. But yeah, higher taxes, capital flight, smaller tax base, you get lower revenue, you get slower growth, and then you and me are in government like, hey, we better raise some taxes.
Yeah, it's just,
yeah.
I mean, it's like the States, right? I think, was it 1913? Up until then, there was no tax.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So it doesn't go away, right? You'll get an occasional government that drops it a couple points to make everybody feel good and vote for them, but the endless cycle is constantly going up. And at some point, you have become a socialist country because you're working for the government.
Yeah,
because at 100% tax rate, which is where it ends, then that's what it is.
Well, some of those countries are getting pretty close to it. Just on that point that I was foreshadowing about, and this is what I really hate about kind of governments in general, is that every time you kind of figure it out and get like one step ahead of them, they're bullies and they figure it out, right? So my last point was that the EU is putting a commission together in the Q2 of this year, and they want to study block-wide coordination of all these taxes, so that if Spain cranks theirs, people, they can avoid it by moving somewhere else. So they're like, okay, yeah, we'll make it on everybody, and there'll be no haven. So if they do that, I mean, they're just.
Well, I think what they're trying to accomplish is to create the U.S. standard, basically, which is a federal tax on top of a state tax, right? So the EU would be the federal one, and each country would be like a state tax.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
the EU wants more power.
Yeah,
it's not. They don't have enough. I think it's going to break up at some point.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We keep talking about that in several countries too, like whether Alberta is going to leave Canada or something like that, and it just always ends up being a lot of talk. But
yeah. Well, we should probably wrap it up. It's been a little while. Do you want any closing thoughts on Latin America and then some upcoming events?
Well, I don't think it's naive to say that the whole fall of empires conversation. Latin America right now, for probably the next number of generations and hopefully a long time, is a great place to live. You have a great culture. You have a very inexpensive cost of living. You can structure it so that you pay almost zero tax. Like, you got to love a country like Panama, where you can come in here as an expat, set up a system where you're working for countries outside the territorial tax and pay 0%. And people think, well, how is that? How do they make roads and stuff like that? Because there is tax on local, businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we're creating so many jobs and bringing so much money into the country, it's just generating this flywheel of economy. And the smart countries have figured that out. Like, they're not. I mean, someday, hopefully, many generations from now, they're going to go, oh man, we need to implement some kind of income tax on foreign earned income. And
maybe if they separate money from state, they'll never get to that point.
I'm pushing very hard. I mean, that brings up Bitcoin Day in Panama here for coming up soon.
Yeah.
This, I'm hoping, doing our little part to try to create Bitcoin circular economies in our Veritas villages. But on the next level up is try to get countries to adopt Bitcoin as a currency. And I think once that happens, it's going to be a snowball effect. A few countries will start doing it, and those will be the attractive countries for a lot of people, because you can set your life up around a Bitcoin standard. So then it doesn't matter 3 generations from now, and they say, well, we're going to start increasing the taxes. Or the beauty of it is you can't print it, so you can't create inflation by printing it.
Yeah, it should force them to live within their means.
Yeah. Anyway, long-winded close, I guess. But
but we got another country that's great on the radar. You want to drop a few hints about our next community launch?
Well, we're still. If you're talking about Costa Rica,
I am.
All right. I'm just so in the brain mode of seeing so many different countries lately that we've got a beautiful property in Costa Rica that we were able to acquire the last large tract of land in Costa Rica in the Atris area. And one of the things you got to love about Atris is National Geographic rated it as having the best climate on the planet. So, I mean, that sure doesn't hurt for marketing, right? So we're really excited about opening that up, phase 1 here in the next month or so. And if you have any questions about that, Costa Rica is going in the right direction, like a lot of the countries are here. They just recently elected a centric right-leaning government versus the previous socialist sort of one. So there's another country like Ecuador, like Argentina, like Salvador, that's kind of going in the right direction. And I'm happy about that, because Costa Rica is an extremely beautiful country. And we're excited to have a Veritas Village Atris pretty soon. So.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. It's always good to do these together, and we'll have to do it more often. We keep saying that, but we will try to be more often. Hope you guys like it. I know a lot of this was focused on Europe and some parts around the world, but it's a big Western world movement right now. The wealth taxes, exit taxes, and things. So I highly recommend you at least consider looking at a plan B, whether it's in one of our communities or not, for your own sake, for your own family's sake. Open up the idea of where else could you be. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. All right, freedom lovers, that wraps up today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like the video. And if you're interested in learning more about freedom-oriented living and community options in Latin America, you can find more about Veritas Villages in the link below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.